my good sis, Mari. Hi.
Well, hey!
It's been a minute and a half.
And then some,
I
feels
think,
like a lifetime.
yeah, like the longest minute ever. Because so much has happened in that minute, but like, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. How are you? Let me ask you this time. How are you doing on this blessed Tuesday morning?
Well, I am so happy to be back with you. So happy to, be able to have the conversations that I feel like I've been mulling over for 20 plus days now.
Who's
I
counting?
am on this Tuesday in anticipation of Wednesday, since every Wednesday this month has been levels of who knows what's going to happen.
Listen,
Ma'am, we'll get there. We'll get there. Don't worry, guys. We'll get there. But I'm good. I'm feeling optimistic. And I'm so happy to say that because I think this is the first time in a very long time we've seen a level of optimism on this show.
yeah.
So I'm good. I've missed you, but I'm good. How are you doing?
Oh, I've missed you too. Yeah, it's been, I mean, obviously we've been in, because like to our listeners slash viewers, we are friends. So,
Yeah.
we do keep in touch. But yeah, I have also been watching the last month unfold, being like, okay, it's 2021, like let's see what the year has in store for us. And so far I am not bored. So we can say that. That's for sure. Cause there's been some things going down. And I have also been quite like itching to get back to this space and to like kind of say it, yeah, discuss it and see like your thoughts on the matter and everything.
No, you're right. And you know what? We're just going to go there. First and foremost, as we always say, it may be season 2, but nothing has changed in these Black women's worlds. We are still looking for justice for Breonna Taylor.
Yep.
We are at almost a year. We are now seeing where jurors from the trial are saying that they want the AG, Daniel Cameron, impeached. And I am honestly right along there with them because nothing has been done for our good sis. And we want to continue to acknowledge her because her life mattered.
Like, I don't understand how, like on an actual just like little small side note, I genuinely don't, I still have a hard time understanding his justifications for how he's decided to kind of bring this, like carry this out in justice or in injustice rather. Like it is quite, and so I don't know, I have no like big opinions on like his impeachment or anything like that, but I will say that like I'm not surprised to have read that the other day because yeah, what kind of precedent does this set? Like
honestly, it was the precedent was already set. And for anybody that's new to this program, take the time to go back. We've touched on this a myriad of times.
Yeah.
But we've had the conversation surrounding police and their inability to be prosecuted for a myriad of reasons and policies that are already in place. And this was just, qualified immunity at work. And we've touched upon that multiple times and about the effects of how it protects the state and then how that impacts Black people. But this is really just that. And I think the thing that makes it so egregious to so many people is that, this was a young woman who was killed in her home. Mm-hmm. Not only that, this was a space in which we were already swelling in a time post George Floyd, post Ahmaud Arbery, where we were having the conversations. We were discussing what was happening, and yet people continuously tried to delegitimize her narrative, her death, and what happened to her, whether that be because of lack of video, lack of evidence, what they claim she did or didn't do before. The standards were different. And the reason that we keep bringing it up on this show, Mel, and I know that we've talked about this, is because the ways in which Black women are treated is not the same as everybody else. And as Black women, it is our duty to continue to speak truth to power for women that look like us. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And we got lucky because last week we got our first Black woman VP First South Asian woman VP. We also got full display of Black women's fashions. Yes, yes, yes.
I see
Michelle.
I was gonna say, I see we're both, well, I'm trying anyway. You're doing a much better job than I am, but you're channeling some serious Michelle Obama wave bounciness right now. I don't try with
my girl from the south side of Chicago, Mel. I'm just a girl from the south side of Chicago, you know?
You're like, we from the same place. Like, this is how they build us.
Yeah, we have to acknowledge that. Before we got into any serious topics, we had to give fashion props to Auntie Michelle and, you know, Auntie Kamala. Also, tell them thank you for giving nods to Shirley Chisholm. And if you don't know who Shirley Chisholm is, she was the first Black person ever endorsed by a major party to run for president. She was the first Black woman elected to the Congress. We pay so much homage. We know that there would be no Kamala, there would be no Michelle, there would be no Mari and Mel.
Facts.
She did not exist. So we take that moment.
The fits were on fire.
Fits were crazy.
I was watching it. Even what's her name? Laura Bush walked out, and I was like, okay. It's like, normally I'm not one to like.
Dr. Jill. Also, I said, ma'am, is that a sparkle? Okay, we see you.
She said, let me brighten your day. Loved it. Loved all of it. But yes, in the context of today's episode, we've called it A Tale of Three Wednesdays. One, because apparently I come up with titles like on the spot, because imaginative. But also, it did genuinely feel like by the time we reached the inauguration last week, it was like the third act of some insane drama that was happening. Like it literally felt as if, okay, now, not that we were closing the book, but like kind of, and it did feel like it was like, okay, we actually made it. He's been inaugurated. This is official now. Like Donald Trump is no longer like a sitting president. It's over. And I guess we should probably start, but let us not dwell on it for too long because we definitely could. We can start with January 6th.
2021.
2021.
If you were somehow off of all forms of social media, not watching the news, and didn't have a friend to chat to, was the day of the white supremacist coup insurrection at the United States Capitol.
Attempted coup.
You're correct.
Let us be real. You know what I'm saying? They tried it. They tried it.
Here we are. Our republic still stands, but they tried it.
They tested it, boy. They tested it, but
digress. But it was a moment in which Mel and I have talked a lot on this show about the end of white supremacy and it clawing and clutching at everything that it has to sustain the power in which it's had over the United States since its inception.
Right.
And in all honesty, what we saw on January 6th was that incarnate.
Yeah.
We saw a sitting president do a myriad of things in which we'd never seen before. So we started with the Stop the Steal rally.
Girl,
Exactly. We're going to let you marinate on that. And that in which, if you didn't know, was a call to arms by the former president of the United States because he believed that the Electoral College voting and counting, which was occurring on January 6, 2021, was illegal and fraudulent. Now, let's be clear. Usually, when people count Electoral College votes, it is a formality that takes no more than 30 minutes. But no.
I didn't even know, honestly, I didn't even know that was part of the process. Like, it is never, because I didn't even know that it had to pass through, like, Capitol Hill, basically, to be So I remember when we got, because let's be real on this situation with how it happened, right? So we have a lovely little group chat with Netta, who has been on this show multiple times and that we love and appreciate to death, like crazy.
Shout out to you, sis.
Yeah, facts. And all of a sudden, I just remember seeing a text that said something like, they're in the Capitol building. And I was like, who is in the Capitol? And I scroll up and I was like, oh, no. And I grabbed my flatmate. I'm like, it's reality TV time. Like, I was like, we about to watch something go down that I don't know what we gonna watch go down, but something's about to go down. Like, something's actually about to happen. And I was like, why are they, like, I was like, that's a bit random. Like, inauguration's in 2 weeks. Like, this is premature, as someone could say. But then it was like, oh no, because they're counting. So as you're saying, it is a process that is banal, that usually takes 30 minutes, nothing crazy. But all of a sudden now, this was the hub where this conspiracy was about to take place, and they were going to solidify the fact that they wanted Trump out and whatever, and that now his supporters had to go and like stop the count.
Well, let's be think about this. Was they've been talking about this for a very long time. It was not new news to any of us that this is the day in which they were going to have their attempted coup. In his speech at this Stop the Steal rally, he literally said, if you're going to be a zero and not a hero, we're coming for you. Okay, sir. He then continued to incite this violence of this mob of 200 or 300 people. Then, we had Rudy Giuliani crawl out of his crypt and suddenly start speaking and trying to incite folks. And, Don Jr. had to get in there. Everybody had to get on the microphone. So they, took this time to incite this mob of people and ended with, let's march to the Capitol. Let's march to the Capitol. When they get to the Capitol, people like Josh Hawley, Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, yes, we recognize you, sir. You should be out of office because you did help incite this madness. And we are going to call you by name, period.
Okay.
Was out there waving to people, fist pumping, encouraging this rambunctious animosity that was occurring at our nation's capital. And I think when this was initially started, there were a lot of people, and by a lot of people, I'm honestly going to say non-Black and POC people who knew what was coming, who believed that this truly was going to just be a rally. It was just going to be a moment to rally around their illegitimate president. But white supremacy doesn't die without somebody trying to keep it alive.
Yeah.
You can't take power from someone or attempt to keep it without some level of violence. That's basic conflict understanding 101.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what these people did. They decided that the only way for them to keep their power was to storm the Capitol and try and take back and stop what they felt was their birthright. Those blue-blooded Americans that all the rest of us who do not look like them do not get to qualify as. And just sit there as a Black woman and as a BLM activist and watch as people climbed scaffolding, dropped pipe bombs, ran up on police, stormed into the Senate chamber, put their feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk, stole computers, and I can honestly just keep running down the list.
Yeah.
The only thing I could think was, if these were Black people, or if this was Black Lives Matter activists, or if these were brown people, this would be a very different and a very bloody scene.
Yeah. I mean, it already was bloody in situations where you had people that weren't even on any sort of private property. People were just in the street, which is it's not even that you have a right to be on it or not. It's the street, like it's public property. And you still saw, you know, even journalists that were also getting hurt by the riot police. Like no one was being spared at these BLM rallies and like these BLM protests, because at the end of the day, like in that institution's eyes, sorry, I'm out here tripping on my words, but in that, because I'm really trying to, you know, laser focus what I'm trying to say, because obviously you and I both, it's not even that we're emotional about this or not, but obviously like this is also something that we fight for and that we advocate. And so to see, you know, we wouldn't have, if we had been at Capitol Hill like that, we wouldn't have made it back out.
Well, let's be real. When there was a peaceful protest during the summer of BLM, which was occurring around the Capitol, not on it, not in it, around in the general vicinity of DC, we remember the pictures of the National Guard. We remember the violence that was enacted by the police, by the federal guards on peaceful protesters.
Yeah.
If I think about last weekend, I have images in my head of the police in Tacoma, Washington, running down protesters.
Mm.
We have those images. We have those memories. We experienced that level of violence at the hands of the state enacted upon our bodies. Mm-hmm. But in this instance, the same level of callousness is not shown. And the key thing here that I kept seeing on social media and I kept hearing from other BLM activists, and it is definitely something that I know you and I both believe, is that nobody is asking you to treat these people with the same level of disrespect in which you treat Black and brown people. But what we are demanding is that you do not show them the door, enter them into the space, and allow this level of absolute ridiculousness and violence to occur, especially in a place. I remember being a little kid. It didn't matter if you were Black, white, blue, or green. Hell, they told you if you are near the Capitol, a sniper is about to shoot you down. That is federal property. That is our government. We don't play about this democracy, this republic, period.
Yeah.
So please explain to me how we did not have that same level of security. I know church ushers that had better security than we saw at the Capitol. Please explain.
Well, you know, it is the house of the Lord. It has to be protected. Ain't no blasphemous things happening there, no sir. But no, I completely agree with you. And I think that that kind of like, you know, from obviously you and I, like, I'm okay. You're definitely American. I'm more American by culture / like I'm an anchor baby. But it is what it is. But obviously we were watching this even from an outside perspective, right? Because we're both in the UK. And it is one of those things that like, you know, other European governments kind of also commented on, was the complete like disparity. I think I'm using the right word, but I'm not sure. The like insane differences of like use of force in these situations. And again, it's like you're saying, it's not as if we're saying like, oh, well, there should have been riot police gunning down people. Like, no, like it's got nothing. There shouldn't be, like, I personally am of the belief that like there shouldn't be such a heavy militarized police system anyway. But that's just me. But in that regard, like in any case, there should like it shouldn't have gotten to that. It shouldn't have gotten to that point in either situations, whether it's the peaceful BLM protests that end up with people getting shot by rubber bullets, and, you know, like there's a journalist that lost an eye. Like, it's really messed up. And the fact that like there's that level of violence when it's people demanding literally just like respect and dignity and justice. And then on the flip side, when you do have like known white supremacists that are now storming the Capitol, they are literally taking selfies with them, showing them the door, like not showing any sort of like, you know, physical restraints to guard that place and to guard. It's not even, okay, the building in itself, symbolic and everything. Yeah, that is scary. What about the actual politicians that were inside though? Like, that is also a thing.
What's interesting to me in this scenario, and you're right, Mel. Like, what's interesting to me about this is we've often talked about policing was originally started to catch fugitive slaves, right? Mm-hmm. That is the reason that there are police in the United States of America. And throughout this period, especially in these last 10 to 12 months, we've had the conversation around the Blue Lives Matter movement and knowing thine enemy and recognizing that for Black and brown people, the police are thine enemy.
Yeah.
And for white people, there is a level of privilege that comes with being white and a level of comfort that comes with your interactions with the police. That is exactly what we witnessed on display here. Mm-hmm. And what's most interesting to me, as you talked about, the building is symbolic and these people stormed a government space, is that the police that were helpful, the police that were saving people, was a Black police officer named Eugene Goodman. The images of Eugene Goodman steering this mob away from where Mike Pence and his family were hiding is the epitome of white supremacists should be lucky that Black folks are not looking for revenge. We're just looking for equality and equity and justice.
Yeah.
Because in all honesty, in that moment, a vengeful act would be to fight back. But in that moment, this police officer was protective. And that's a dichotomy that can't be lost, right? Because it's not just about the building. That's exactly what you said. Inside the building, we're human beings. And for a lot of Republican senators, what I kept hearing out of the media was that this was the first time they felt the violence, the surveillance, the level of fear that a lot of their Black and brown colleagues had felt at multiple instances throughout their life.
Or even constituents, like you're also there representing people that have probably felt that exact same feeling that you have felt, and you're still guaranteed protection. You know, and I think that it is just kind of maddening that it's like you need to have that. I mean, it's I'm not gonna say it's a blessing, but like it's almost, you know, okay, if that had to happen for you to realize like how deep that fear is and how like terrifying and panicky it can be, at least you've had the experience, so now you know. But like it's very sad that it has to get to that point first before we can, you know what I mean, before I
agree. You and I have talked about this, and I believe Pastor Moss talked about it in our season finale last week. The enabling of the violence, not just the physical violence, but the violent language and the symbols that were enacted upon people in the past 4 years was egregious. And people tended to justify this with a myriad of different solutions. Oh, it's just 4 years. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, he's not going to be this. End all, let them all continue to roll, whatever your excuse may be. But it genuinely took the Pandora's box that you opened, that you allowed, that you festered and fed to bubble over into your own life to feel what people felt for 4 years.
Yeah. Them Trump supporters ain't no joke. Ain't no joke. Like
I was worried about BLM and we're screaming, don't kill us. These people came to kill you, bro.
To kill you, exactly. And that's what blows my mind, right? Is that at the end of the day, you know, it is no longer, because there has been quite a divide in the country in terms of like, did you vote Biden or did you vote Trump? You know, and obviously that divide is scarily close to 50-50.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that 55% of white women. If you want to hear us talk about it, we already did it. Run it back.
Run it back. But I will say that, you know, and I don't interact. I don't have like a lot of Republican friends. Like, it's not like I know what's being said, or felt or thought. But, you know, I do think that has probably also awoken a lot of people who voted for Trump because they just didn't want to vote for Biden. That it's like, FYI, this is low-key what you're actually supporting. Like, you may not be this person yourself because you're, you know, oh, I'm fiscally conservative. et cetera, et cetera. Like, I don't know, live your life. But that is ultimately who his ride or dies are. Like, that is ultimately who will literally kill people to make sure that he stays in power. Because that is the type of person that a president like Trump is enabling and is validating and is saying, like, you know what, actually, your opinion matters. Not that the Trump supporters' opinion don't matter, right? I'm not going to say that. But what I will say is that if you are still in the idea of, well, no, he could add so many things up to the country, then you're ignoring it's not even an elephant at this point. It's like a dinosaur. Like, you're ignoring the huge issue in front of us, which is that this man, I'm talking about ex-president, soon to be probably impeached for the second time, like getting rid of him type of situation, Donald Trump, he is not, he's not there for the people. He's here for himself, because he was ready to send out like literally foot soldiers to just go and like take back the Capitol for him, like do all of this and make stop the counts, all this stuff, da 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 da. But I will say that I do want to make one point about like the reaction to Trump from this. So obviously, while most people are just like, this is absolutely insane, blah, 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 there is, I think, an issue, which I'm happy to like discuss, debate, whatever at another time. But essentially, at first I was like, okay, yes, suspend his Twitter account for 12 hours, because currently people are still in the Capitol. There's still some like crazy stuff going down. Right. Let's not add more fuel to the fire. And this man is like straight up gasoline. So like, let's not do that. However, I am a bit worried about how quickly every other social media platform essentially was like, yeah, we've axed him too. He's not allowed to come back on our platforms either. Because I'm not saying that he deserves to be on there, right? But that also sets a hell of a precedent in terms of like, if your opinion is not agreed upon by like the vast majority, you will be kicked off of platforms. And I'm not saying that these people deserve to stay on, but like, I just find it very dangerous to be able to like take away that kind of that freedom of like expression and speech that quickly. I think that he did incite stuff, so I get it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have banned. I'm just saying that we need to be careful with like the fact that we do have these internet platforms where now we're all like sharing ideas and sharing whatever, to like that quickly remove someone, because now there's like an incoming administration that like these companies want to have on their side when it comes to like whatever, business stuff they have in plan for the next 4 years. Make sure that like they're on the good side of the current administration. But also, what does that say in terms of like, it could add even more fuel to the fire to these supporters of his that were already down at the Capitol. Now we're seeing their idol like being martyred and like taken away from everything. Like, it just adds, I find that it just like adds more credibility to his story, that he's being like, shushed away, and that like mainstream media is lying and like all that stuff. Like, it's, yeah.
I think there's twofold to that. I think you said a few things, and I'm going to try and come back to all of them. But on that one first, I think there's twofold to that. I don't think it was quickly. Think about 4 years of the violence that you incited. There was nothing quick about you being banned from anything. You were given every opportunity 1,000,007 times over to be a decent human being in which you did not incite violence against others in a myriad of ways, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, or through policies and systems. You were given every opportunity. You were given 4 years. And then your culmination was a violent insurrection in which 4 people died. Multiple people got COVID because they were unmasked people in the Capitol. And you almost killed your VP, as well as the entire Senate and Congress. No, there was nothing quick about that. That was the culmination of years in the making. So I don't think that there was anything rushed about that. Plus, you were offered an opportunity on several occasions to not do what you were doing. But I hear you in time, because I don't think what got him banned on these platforms was specifically your wording. That wasn't what got you banned. It was the violence in which you acted. And that's very different than stopping free speech, which just isn't going to happen. Like his administration attempted to stop free speech in the media, and that's just not how the US works. It's just not going to happen. And I think what's interesting when you bring up, the people that follow him is, let's be very clear, people had this vision in their head that a Trump supporter was a disenfranchised white person from rural America with no access to the internet. Insert all of these tropes here. That's what people envisioned. But as you saw in that violent insurrection, that's not the case. Trump supporters are a very wide gamut. As people started releasing who they saw in those videos post-insurrection, they look like Wall Street brokers. They look like restaurant owners. They look like people in the Senate. It's not a singular type of human being that is drawn to Donald Trump. Your ideology might all be the same, whereas you feel as though white people are being disenfranchised, and so therefore you feel like you need to oppress others to continue your power. That is the one thing that is made evidently clear across the board. But your socioeconomic status, your job, your access to education, et cetera, are all very different. And that is why when we talk about, which I believe we talked about on one of the previous episodes, y'all gonna have to go back and find it. We talked about white supremacy does not die with Donald Trump. This level of clawing and systemic oppression and systemic injustice does not end because this man is no longer in office. It ends because people like us and like other activists and policymakers and everyday people continue to fight for the equity and justice in which disenfranchised populations are so deserving of. And so, yes, those people, you're right, they're not going to disappear, and they may try and get loud, but they've been on the fringes of society or the mainstream of society for 400 years. This man, this idol that they have, did not bring them to power, is not going to be the reason they end. The reason that we can continue to chat on this show is because we know that. And we know that, like, with this incoming administration, it is still our job to push them to put the policies in place, because these systemic inequities are still here on a basic level. Let's think about it. Those Trump supporters that got arrested, right? Most of them have been released on some form or fashion of bail. Now, there is the case in which Trump enacted this law where you could get up to 10 years in prison if you defaced any federal property. He didn't pardon any of these people because clearly he doesn't give a crap. So they really are facing the full fashions of the law. But the law, like the legal system, is still not equal. The perfect example I'll give you is Khalif Browder, 16, allegedly stole a backpack, was sent to Rikers, was in solitary confinement for years, right? Riley Williams, 22, stole Nancy Pelosi's computer, it is on camera, stole Nancy Pelosi's computer, was released to the custody of her mother same day.
Damn.
These systems did not die with Donald Trump leaving office. What did happen with this insurrection was people who were silent, people who were ignorant, people who did not see what they didn't want to see. You were forced to witness the two Americas. You were forced to reckon with the fact that America does not look the same for all people, point blank, period. Now we have to figure out, where do we go with that information? That's what the next Wednesday was, right? We're moving across the next Wednesdays. That's what the next Wednesday was. Because we still saw on Wednesday, January 6th, when they did that vote eventually at 8 p.m. that night, 147 senators and congresspeople still dissented, still believe that this was fraudulent. We have to go somewhere from here.
And like, those are people who literally make decisions for like up to hundreds of thousands of citizens and individuals every day. Like, that makes me very uncomfortable. Like, I don't know what else to say. And like, yeah. And also, I don't know, I didn't, it is, I just think this whole situation is so, it obviously didn't need to be that way, but it is almost, I'm almost grateful that it did happen, because now this is burning evidence that, like, this is, you know what I mean? You can't say that America is no longer, we're not like this. Yes, you might not be.
Say that. You are. If you have to say it every 6 months, every 2 months.
No, but like,
you are.
But I mean, I'm not, there are people who continuously say this, but I mean, genuinely, like, people who were shocked by, again, like you said, having to see the two Americas. Like, and I think that that's probably why, when that same night, I think it was Ilhan Omar or like the next day, that went and presented the documents of impeachment.
Yeah, I think it's Cori Bush and Ilhan Omar co-authored the articles of impeachment. Shout out to
remember seeing her tweet.
Still love you.
Yeah, I just remember seeing her tweet that was like, I'm preparing this, it's happening. And I was like, well, yeah, that would probably also be my immediate reaction, like, to get that done straight away. Because again, now you have lived experience evidence that shows that, like, this man was never honored the office of the presidency the way that he had sworn an oath to do so 4 years ago.
No, you're right. And interesting, because Ilhan Omar and Cori Bush co-authoring just makes me think, as usual, the world doesn't deserve Black women. Here we are, out here helping y'all again. When Black people rise, everybody gets equity. Crazy.
I know, it is a hell of a concept to wrap your head around, but I promise.
Well, we'll digress. We'll come back to the policy. We'll come back. I'm here. I'm ready. But you're right. What's interesting about that article, those articles of impeachment, first of all, shout out to Nancy Pelosi. We saw you in your all Black impeachment fit. Run it back 2 times.
She has facts. Yeah, she got
a whole impeachment fit. That's fine. That's a lot.
Like, oh, I get to wear this again.
That's a whole vibe. But for the first time, or for one of the first times in 4 years, we saw a genuine level of bipartisan support. Yeah. We saw a dissent from Republicans who had been incredibly hard-lined on issues because they had a Republican president. They dissented. They said what we witnessed was not okay. Now, for a lot of them, the reasons in which it was not okay have a lot to do with American democracy and the vision in which they hold America's status in the world and the ways that we want to be seen. And that's fair. That is also something that I think even people like myself, I care about, If we're going to say that we hold these truths to be self-evident, if we're going to say we're going to be a true democracy, then we have to be such.
Right.
But I think for others, there was something that probably sparked in you that said, the tide is a turning.
Yeah.
Because on January 6th, there was a violent coup, but we also saw a Black man and a Jewish man get voted into the Senate in Georgia with the help of a Black woman. Lord, who would have thunk the day?
Yeah.
The tide is a turning.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. We're not going to see these policy changes, these scaping and gaping sweeps that we want to see without continuing to do the work inside and outside of the system, right? You and I talked about this on the show. Grassroots activists have been doing this work for years. There was no Joe Biden election. There was no turn of the Senate. There was no keeping of the House. If grassroots activists had not been out there in these streets getting people ready to vote, it doesn't happen. But on the same coin, if we didn't have candidates like a Cori Bush, like an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like a Raphael Warnock, who were our options, y'all also wouldn't see the tide change.
Yeah.
And so now America really does have some decisions to make.
Yeah.
We're hearing a lot about unite the people, unite the country. And yes, as Amanda Gorman said, we do need to figure out how to unite. No question. We need to be resilient. We need to figure out how to push into the next phase to make America a more equitable society. But let's be abundantly clear. If we forget our history and we forget all the trials and tribulations that we have had as a country, in which we have allowed people to be disenfranchised, killed, and held, what we saw on January 6th, then we have nowhere to go, because we will soon and quickly forget all that has happened, and we will go back to the status quo. And like we said, I don't want to go back to what was. I want to move forward into something new.
Yeah. And I think that that is kind of like a rhetoric that is missing in this, not by everyone, obviously, because I'm not, you know what I mean? And also, I'm not going to go down by list of names because I don't have them, but like the general, like, language and rhetoric that has been said also by Biden multiple times is, you know, this idea of like, yeah, you know, we need to go back to decency. We need to go back better. Back better. Even like Emmanuel Macron, obviously, like French president, when this happened, first of all, man had a whole IGTV video where he was out here saying that, like,
not IGTV.
Again, this is also on a side note, on my very like patriotic side note. This is also the president who has like essentially enabled for a censorship law to be put in place. And it's called like global security law or something like that. And it's basically saying that like you can't record law enforcement because you risk a fine or you risk a year in jail.
Not those kind of laws. We don't. Oh, now I know why they're in the streets in France. Not that.
We hit the streets for anything, but like that's been the biggest one because no, a lot of people have come out and said, you know, who have been victims of police brutality and have said like, I got told straight up, the fact that I had video evidence is the reason why I got like, you know, my justice, or like why things happen. And so it is, you know, I was waiting to see what he was going to say, because obviously we got the names of the insurrectionists and like the police officers who stood by and did nothing and took selfies and stuff. Like we got all of that because of video footage, sometimes taken by the insurrectionists themselves. But regardless,
everybody was bright. We didn't say that.
Right. They were like, my name is Michael, my social security is this. Like, bruh, go ahead, give me all of the information, give me all of it. Who's your employer? Okay. So regardless, I was waiting to see what Macron was going to say. And it was very much obviously along the lines of like what we saw was absolutely blah, 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 horrendous, etc. Like in this, like we now live in a democratic world. Like this shouldn't happen. The world's biggest democracy, like it shouldn't have happened kind of thing. Like it kept on saying the whole thing of like, this shouldn't be the case. This shouldn't be how it happened, etc., etc. And he also made a little like side speech, you know, in English to be like, we are here, we support you, etc., etc. Okay. Like being very, you know, upfront and forward about this and stuff. But even him in his kind of language as well, it was like, this is not the America that we know, like the beacon of democracy, like all that stuff. And in my head, I'm like, okay, so I mean, the United States has helped facilitate coups across the world, but we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there. We're just gonna stick domestic. Yeah, we're gonna stay local. We're not gonna think global. We're gonna stay local. Yeah. Okay. So insurrections don't happen in the United States. Fine, fair enough. But what kind of better situation, society are you talking about if that's the one that led to this happening in the first place? That's where I'm like, why do you keep saying build back better? We need to go back to this time, because if we're trying to go back in time and we gonna replay out the same steps the exact same way, then we're going to still end up at the same conclusion.
Well, let's be clear. The Civil War in the United States of America was technically the start of a violent insurrectionist coup. Like rich, wealthy slave owners convinced poor, not slave-owning white folk that their best bet was to secede. we gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna let you guys go find some history books, have that conversation amongst yourself.
We gonna also
right, Mels.
Yeah.
The thing about Build Back Better, I'll give it to them. The alliteration, spot on. But as my girl Angela Rye said, I believe that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, along with the Democratic members of the Senate and the Congress, can push us into the future in which we need to see. And I understand that the thought of Build Back Better is to find a level of decency and unity and humility,
right,
that allows America to be who we thought it was and who it wants to think it should be. But in order for us to truly create the unity in which I think we are trying to attempt, or in order for us to create the unity in which we want to see, we need to recognize that equity and justice have to be at the forefront. And that is going to make some people uncomfortable. We are going to have to push past that discomfort because Black and brown people have been pushing past discomfort for 400 years. Period.
Welcome
and there should be unity. You're right. People do need to get on board. You're right. But you also need to remember what happened. The same way we don't forget 9/11 because you want to have some big terrorist threat that you claim happened. We need to not forget when white supremacists attempted to take over the United States Capitol. Both of those things are ways in which we changed the country. And we need to move forward from that. And we're seeing that in this administration, right? We've seen the end of the Muslim ban. If you don't know what the Muslim in Africa ban is, go back to the first season. We told you what it was. We told you how it was affecting people. 4 or 5. Our girl Netta's on it. Yeah. Crimmigration. But we saw the end of the Muslim ban. We saw the rejoining of the Paris Accord, which Ted Cruz apparently thought was about having a cleaner Paris.
We're going to have to leave that one all the way outside.
Sir, somebody elected you to office.
No, and then I think my favorite part is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez then hitting back and being like, right, because the Geneva Conventions are only for people in Geneva. Okay.
Anywho, we also rejoined the WHO. Yes, we did.
Jesus Christ.
We also, now have a federal mask mandate. Amen. We also have a COVID plan. Praise Jesus. We've rebuked all of the transgender bans in the military. We have a new immigration bills that are coming into place. We're no longer calling people aliens in our writing. And we're giving clear path to citizenship. We are doing the things. We also signed some racial justice things. I saw that. You and I will get into that deeper in a later show because I want to be fully equipped with what we're talking about before we raise anything on it.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, the ball is rolling. We're seeing things move. But you and I have said this umpteen million times, and I'm going to keep saying it because it's important. This is a movement, not a moment. If we want to see the changes in the United States to reflect who we want it to be, we have to keep pushing.
Yeah.
Because while we may have elected a new president on January 20th, and we may have people in power who are willing to listen, who are willing to push forward, like I said at the beginning of this episode, Tacoma, Washington happened over the weekend. That was after the inauguration. These systems are systems for a reason.
Yeah.
They are foundational. They are constitutional, and they are embedded in the fabric of American society. They did not disappear when this false idol disappeared and slithered back into his hole.
Oh, she said slithered.
Bye-bye. Okay. We did it.
No,
it's our job.
Yeah.
To keep it going. It's our job, to keep our knee on the necks of white supremacy.
And it is like, you know, it really is, now is the time to, okay, you know, obviously executive orders is one thing and it is wonderful and we love that kind of power sometimes.
Sometimes.
But but like obviously, you know, this is also, Democrats have full control of all of government basically.
Praise.
So now is the time to actually set all of this in place and in motion, and to show that like Democrats being in charge is not a bad thing, where we now need to bring back Republicans in 2 years. Like, not saying Republicans shouldn't be in or anything like that. Like, that is not the point. It shouldn't be a partisan thing. It should be a policies thing.
Yep.
And, you know, if we're gonna, we need to start seeing, I say we, you know, again, I ain't even there. But like, there needs to be, you know, the United States at the end of the day also affects more than Americans and more than just its borders, right? Like on the terrain. This is something that, you know, it's in the case of like in the UK here with Brexit and stuff, Trump and Boris Johnson were like the best of friends. And now, you know, there's a situation where I believe that like before the election results happened, like Johnson hadn't even ever reached out to Biden in any way, shape, or form. So hadn't even considered the fact that his trading partner might not actually be the head Cheeto in charge. And like, that's the situation that we face now, is that like, you know, there has to be, there's been a schism that's been created on our like world politics and on the global stage, right? And it's not been created by Trump, but as, you know, the leader of like the biggest military power in on the planet, it definitely reinforced it. I done seen a video yesterday of Bolsonaro with like a whole, you know, them machine guns that are like round. Yeah. So he was literally saying like, we're going to gun down like the opposition if they, you know what I mean, if they try to like oppose us and all this stuff. And do you imagine like if that had happened in the quote unquote capital W West, like, and you had like a full on, I don't even call it a fascist, a psycho with a gun, like saying, oh yeah, any member of the opposition that comes through, like, you're getting this. Do you imagine? Like, that can't happen. And so it's almost one of those things where I'm not saying that like Biden now has to be the kumbaya guy that brings the whole world together, right? But there has been some serious damage done by the last administration and how they conducted their affairs and how they conducted their politics. And the fact that like, you know, it was in essence an authoritarian regime without it being the case, because it was in a democratic system. But at the end of the day, like, what it was basically, if you ain't white, if you ain't Anglo-Saxon, if you ain't Protestant, like, you're not the reality of this country.
Yeah,
is super messed up.
No, and I think, you know, as we sadly are coming to a close of our show.
Oh yeah.
But I think you're completely right. So much of this election, so much of the reason that you and I have felt the level of optimism that we felt in the past few days is because we know that what happens in the next 4 years, we know that what happens in the next few months affects more than the citizens of the United States of America.
Yeah.
There was a push in the past 4 years where we saw a rise in racism, fascism, supremacy. And it's time on a global scale for people to find equity, to find justice, to look for a unity that is not entangled in others being oppressed, but is all about all people truly having fair and equitable lives. Whether that be us discussing the ways in which the COVID vaccine is rolled out or the ways in which we judge people and their democracies. There needs to be a push for all of us to have some semblance of a new normal.
Yeah.
One where all people are truly being given stuff that is promised in the US Constitution, like access to these unalienable rights. So, you know, over the next I don't know, few months, we're going to see a lot of changes.
Yeah.
We're going to get to talk a lot of policy, both domestic and international. We know that things like the impeachment have not even gotten started. The first time we're impeaching a not sitting president, and we are going to talk about that because, you know, Cheeto didn't slink away.
I'm ready for it.
In Florida. We got all the tea. We got to bring it to you. But we want to thank all of you all for coming back. Yes. If you're new to our show, thanks for joining the party. If you're old, we appreciate you more than you know.
Oh, like if you're an old listener, like viewer.
If you're an old listener, not if you're an old person. I mean, we appreciate you if you're an old person too. Like, golly, yeah.
I was like, yes.
Yes, we are all about intergenerationals here.
We are very much about intergenerational discussions and conversations. Absolutely.
This is who we are as people, but no, for real, everybody for coming to the show. Thanks for letting Mel and I vent. Thanks for letting us have this space. We hope that this is sparking conversations in your own lives and you're thinking about the ways in which you could make this world better. Black Lives Matter is not a moment. It is a movement. The fight for equity and justice is something in which we all deserve. So thank you guys for listening to us and coming to Got Melanin.
Everybody gather round and listen to my song.